The trailer for Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness just dropped, and we saw a one-eyed octopus throwing a bus at Doctor Strange. Is it Shuma-Gorath, or is it Gargantos? What to spec on? We'll break it down next on this video from Bronzeville Comics.
To our universe.
Hey there, comic book community. This is Jim with Bronzeville Comics, and welcome to another video. Before we get started, I invite you to subscribe to the channel. We're getting close to 1,000 subscribers, and when we do, we'll have a 1,000 subscriber giveaway. I'm actually going to have 3 prizes, and in order to qualify, you have to be a subscriber on the channel. You have to leave a comment on a video. I will I will select a video from the beginning of 2022 until the time we reach 1,000 subscribers, and when I do the giveaway, I'm going to look at the video that has the fewest number of comments and use that to select the winners. Let's get right into it. So recently, I was reading this, yikes. I was reading this book, Marvel Masterworks, Volume 4 of Doctor Strange. And it is kind of a continuation of Doctor Strange. The first several stories in there are from his first ongoing solo series, in which he has the full mask and a secret identity and is treated more of a superhero. The book was canceled before Roy Thomas could finish that storyline. He finished it in 2 other books he was writing, Incredible Hulk and Submariner, and Doctor Strange kind of gave up the life he actually had people forget his secret identity. It was, or the whole magic thing. Sounds familiar. And so eventually Doctor Strange came back in this comic. Once Adam Warlock moved out of Marvel Premiere, in issue number 3, Doctor Strange moved in. This book written by Stan Lee with art by Barry Windsor Smith. Now, in issue number 4, written by Archie Goodwin with art by Barry Windsor Smith, it's the first mention of Shuma-Gorath in the Doctor Strange book. And I was noticing, as I was reading the Masterworks, at the bottom of the credits it said, featuring concepts created by Robert E. Howard. Who is Robert E. Howard? The name may sound familiar to you. He was the creator of Conan the Barbarian. He wrote pulp stories back in the 1930s up until his suicide in 1936 at the age of just 30 years old. And 2 of his more famous creations were Conan the Barbarian and Kull the Conqueror, both of whom were characters that Marvel owned the rights to in the early 1970s when these Doctor Strange stories were published. And actually, I bring that up because I was like, why are they crediting Robert E. Howard? It turns out that Howard had written a short story, The Curse of the Golden Skull, which is a Kull the Conqueror story. And that was a mention of Shuma-Gorath. And I'm going to give credit to Adam Barnhart, and I'm going to show his a picture of his Twitter posting about this issue. Why that Doctor Strange beast may actually be called Gargantos. Shuma-Gorath was a name first coined by Robert E. Howard in a 1967 short story featuring Kull the Conqueror, so Marvel may not actually own the rights to the name. Now, interestingly, the first mention of Shuma-Gorath, I said in the Doctor Strange story, was in that Marvel Premiere number 4. The first mention of Shuma-Gorath in Marvel Comics was in a story here in the 2nd volume, first issue of Journey into Mystery, which was a horror anthology. And it was a story written by Roy Thomas and illustrated by Gil Kane, where you just see a mention of Shuma-Gorath. That's it. Now, starting in issue number 4 of Marvel Premiere, Shuma-Gorath was this threat that had all these followers. And Doctor Strange essentially had to fight a monster a month before finally meeting Shuma-Gorath in issue number 10 of Marvel Premiere, and that's the first full appearance of the character. The story is written by Steve Englehart, the art by Frank Brunner. Interestingly enough, the titles in between were written by Gardner Fox, the legendary comic book writer who co-created Flash, Hawkman, the Justice Society, the Justice League, and also wrote the Flash story, The Flash of Two Earths, which created the comic book concept of the multiverse. But he didn't write this story. That was Steve Englehart. And Shuma-Gorath is a one-eyed octopus and has been a long-time adversary. He's an interdimensional demon and a long-time adversary of Doctor Strange. He's very, very powerful. But who owns his rights? Now, in this comic book, Submariner number 13, Submariner fights a similar-looking character called Gargantos. So this book is given key status as the first appearance of Gargantos. Now, why is that important? Well, look at this. There's a Lego set that came out that features Gargantos and looks like Shuma-Gorath, which is leading a lot of people to speculate that actually the villain in Multiverse of Madness won't be called Shuma-Gorath. It will be referred to as Gargantos. Now, how does that affect these books in particular? By the way, the Submariner 13 was written by Roy Thomas. The art is by Maurice Severin. This book came out 4.5 years earlier. This is a cover date May 1969. The Marvel Premiere 10 is cover date September 1973. Which means that essentially, because it's older, it's a Silver Age book as opposed to a Bronze Age book, and it's a 12 center as opposed to a 20 center, right? This is 20. Yep, still 20. It has intrinsically more value just because it's older. But what value does it have with those of us who deal in MCU spec? And there's a difference between what makes something worth it because of its MCU viability versus its intrinsic comic book value. And that's where we get into this book. The difference between the two. Which one is a better book to spec on heading into the Multiverse of Madness? Now, the problem is, even if you have a high-grade copy, you may not be able to get it back from CGC unless you put it through a high-value tier, which might not really match the value of the book prior to the opening of the movie. So, why Gargantos on the Lego set and not Shuma-Gorath? Now, we've also maybe seen Shuma-Gorath in the What If Disney Plus animated series. In the first episode, the Captain Carter episode, we saw tentacles. But we didn't see what was at the base of those tentacles. And we did see more tentacles that Doctor Strange was fighting in the Doctor Strange episode. And we saw another version of Doctor Strange in the trailer. Is it the Doctor Strange from the What If series? There is so much speculation about the Multiverse of Madness, which is so much fun for us that follow comic books. Now, we talked about Shuma-Gorath's history. Who owns the rights? Does the Robert E. Howard estate own the rights to Shuma-Gorath, and what rights do they own? There's a difference between comic book rights, movie rights, television rights, and toy rights. I'm not a legal expert, and I don't know how the contracts are written or who owns the rights. There's also an issue with Submariner's rights. It seems as though there are a lot of people who believe that Submariner really hasn't been in the MCU because he has the same rights issue as Hulk. Evidently, this is all like secondhand speculation information. The Hulk rights to distribute a film are owned by Universal. So if Marvel makes a self-titled Hulk film, it has to be distributed by Universal, not by Disney. So Hulk has been part of other movies, the Avengers movies, Thor Ragnarok, etc. How are we going to see Hulk used going forward? And is Submariner in the same boat? And what about the characters that were created in the Submariner series? I'm not sure. Could it be that they just want to avoid a possible legal wrangling with the Robert E. Howard estate? I don't know. Because the characters, even though those, Howard passed away now 86 years ago, his stories are not yet in the public domain. But the Gargantos is a curious character. It's just a creature that Submariner fights and defeats that's summoned by the Lemurians. And if you look at some sources, they list Gargantos as having a second appearance in X Factor Annual number 4, which was part of the Atlantis Attack storyline that was in all the Marvel annuals that year. I went back and I reread the book. Gargantos, guess what, true believers? Gargantos is not in X Factor Annual number 4. He has one appearance, and it's this one. Does that make this book valuable? I don't know. Let's take a look at a few facts about these two books. Okay, Universal Blue Labels with CGC. Marvel Premiere 10 has 135, according to the CGC census, 135 Universal Blue Labels. Submariner 13 has 109. Pretty close. Now, this book has 6 9.8s. Submariner has 4. Both look to be, they have black covers, harder to get in high grade. However, of the 135 Universal Blue Labels, 48 of them are 9.0 or better for Marvel Premiere 10, which is, probably about 40%, a little less than 40%. However, for this, 83 of 109 of the books are 9.0 or better. That's about 75%. A little more than 75%, probably, high 70s. The most common grade for Marvel Premiere 10 is a 7.5. There are 19 of those. The most common grade for Submariner 13 is 9.4. There are 28 of those. So there are many more high-grade copies of this. Why is that? My theory is that the only reason people would send this book in is if it was in high grade, because it was never a key. This, Shuma-Gorath has been a somewhat popular character, so this has always had a little bit of key status. And as people are speculating Shuma-Gorath to be a villain in the Doctor Strange movies, it got bumped a little bit more. So even though this is an older book, more high-grade copies on the census. Interesting. And people like to collect this Submariner run. It's a pretty cool and common run for collectors. But let's look at the high-grade sales recently of both of these books. For Marvel Premiere number 10, in November, a 9.2 sold for $890. That's the most recent high-grade sale. An 8.5 in December sold for $800, an 8.0 for $600, and also in December, 6.5 for $405. This book hasn't had any high-grade sales since the summer. A 9.4 in July sold for $199, and a 9.2 for $238, and in May, an 8.5 sold for $90. Now, the market was hot back in the summer. Gargantos wasn't, but the market was. But even if we compare the most recent sale in similar grades, a 9.2, November, $890, July, $238. So you're talking almost 4 times as much money for a 9.2 for Marvel Premiere 10. Now, if somebody sold that 9.2 today, they probably get more than $238 for it. Even though it was a July sale, just the Gargantos spec alone. Would that be worth it? I don't know. I don't know if Gargantos is going to be a character in the Multiverse of Madness, and even if he is, it'll be an important character past the release of that movie. Let's look at the intrinsic value of the comic and its key status compared to its peers. So what is the value of the books on either side of this, which are non-key books in these runs? So again, Submariner number 13 is May of 1969. Issue number 12 has a fair market value according to cover price of $17.73. Issue number 14 has a fair market value of $20.10. So if this had no key status, we would expect the fair market value to be about $20. According to cover price, the fair market value for this book is $46.51, about double what its contemporaries are. For Marvel Premiere 10, number 9 sells fair market value of $11.23, number 11 for $8.83. So we'd expect this to be around $10. The fair market value for this is $225. And that's usually equivalent to a lower mid-grade, like a 5.0 or a 6.0 in a graded copy, the fair market value of books that sell fairly frequently. So this has much more key status. It's worth 20 times what it otherwise would be without any key status. This is only worth about twice what it would be without any key status. So the Gargantos key isn't really driving this book up, at least right now. If you wanted to get a high-grade copy based on recent eBay sales for the Submariner book, you'd probably just have to spend $150, $175 from what I've seen for a high-grade copy. But for the Marvel Premiere 10, you'd probably have to spend $300 or $400. As I said, an 8.0 sold for $600. So if you could get a high-grade book and the 6.0 sells for $600, that's a pretty good buy. So what does this all mean? Now, it could just be a little bit of name games that Marvel's playing with us. Did we see He Who Remains in the Loki series? Did we see Immortus? Did we see Kang? We know we're going to see Kang. Name games there. In the Ant-Man series, right? In the comic books, they use the term microverse. That's from the Micronauts series that came out in the 70s and 80s, which is related to a Hasbro toy line. So the rights to the Micronauts are owned by Hasbro. In the movies, they decided to go with Quantum Realm. So there are many legal reasons why they have these name changes. Could it be that the trademark of Gargantos is still available and Shuma-Gorath is not? I don't know. I don't know if the Howard estate would have necessarily trademarked the name, because I look at it this way. Around the same time this book came out, Shazam #1 came out by DC Comics. They couldn't use the name Captain Marvel. But they were able to title the book Shazam and for decades refer to the character as Captain Marvel. Could it be a similar thing in the movie where on the toy you say Gargantos just because you need to, but in the movie you're going to refer to the character as Shuma-Gorath? I don't know. I do know this. I think that the intrinsic comic book value of Marvel Premiere number 10 is greater than the intrinsic comic book value of Submariner number 13. What do you guys think? Again, I'm not telling you what to buy or sell. I'm just throwing some information out your way. And again, I'm going to give credit to Adam Barnhart, who posted on Twitter first about this, and that's what a lot of the news sources have picked up. Good job by him to kind of put these pieces together. I really didn't have the energy to go through and do all the research until after he had done it. So here's this video. I hope you enjoyed it. I'm sure most of us are looking forward to the Multiverse of Madness film. And for me, whether it's Shuma-Gorath or Gargantos, it doesn't really matter to me. I have both of these books. I picked both of these up as part of a collection a few months ago, a huge collection that I got. This is a higher grade copy. This is probably an 8.5. This is 6.5. Happy to have both of these in the collection right now. Should I even send these out to CGC to get graded? I don't know. Maybe wait and see on that. But it's kind of fun to have these. Let me know in the comments. What do you think? Are you Team Gargantos? Or are you Team Shuma-Gorath? What do you think is going to be the name of... There is... Well, Marvel's fooled us with the trailers before, but the trailer had a one-eyed octopus. What are we going to see in that movie? At least in terms of this. Which book is the good book to spec on? I mean, if you see these for deals or they're books to pick up, you could probably sell them raw leading up to the movie in either case. But let me know in the comments. And until next time, enjoy your comics.